blast from the past. Remember when you laughed.
Hello and welcome to Big Kids TV Podcast, the podcast where we dive deep into the beloved shows that made our childhoods unforgettable. I'm Chris, and today we're talking about a real hidden gem from the late 80s and the early 90s, Bangers and Mash. This animated series was originally aired on ITV in 1989, and it's one of those quirky shows that didn't get as much spotlight as some other shows of its time, but still holds a special place in the hearts of those who remember it. If you're a fan of mischievous chimpanzees, hilarious adventures, and a little bit of chaos, you're in for a treat. So, what exactly was Bangers and Mash all about? Bangers and Mash follows the hilarious and often chaotic adventures of two troublemaking chimpanzees, Bangers and Mash. They're the kind of characters that live for the moment, driven by their curiosity and hunger for fun, which, unsurprisingly, tends to get them into a lot of trouble. The show revolves around their misadventures, where they're always causing a mess or breaking something important, whether it's their parents' belongings, their grandmother's cherished items, or whatever else their little hands can get on. But as much as these chimps love fun, they're surrounded by a cast of characters that keep them in check. Well, sort of. There's Bangers and Mash's parents, their grandmother, and their dog, Mick, who sometimes acts as a long-suffering voice of reason. But it's not just family who get frustrated with the antics. Their friend, Petal, a more sensible character, isn't afraid to show her displeasure when Bangers and Mash push her too far. And of course, we can't forget about the local witch, Miss Snitchnose, who is as peculiar as she is rat-like with a long, haired-covered nose. The show itself is based on a series of children's books by Paul Groves and Edward McLachlan, and was so popular that it even inspired 2 video games in 1992. It's short and sweet with 25 episodes, each one running only about 5 minutes, which makes it a perfect little burst of entertainment. Whether it was Bangers and Mash trying to impress their friends, dealing with the chaos they would cause, or just getting into a slapstick series of misadventures, there was always something to laugh at. But before we dive into the show's specifics, let's take a quick moment to talk about its production. Bangers and Mash was created by Paul Groves and Edward McLachlan, with Paul Groves also serving as the writer. The series was directed by Ian Sachs, and the narration and voices were done by Jonathan Kidd. The memorable theme tune was composed and performed by none other than the iconic British duo Chas and Dave, who were also known for their cheeky, fun tunes that perfectly captured the spirit of the show. If you've heard the theme tune, you'd know exactly what I mean. Now, with just one season, it didn't have the time to overstay its welcome. But those 25 episodes were packed with fun. And when you consider the creative team behind it, it's no wonder the show had such a unique flavour. Filmfare and Central Independent Television teamed up to bring Bangers and Mash to life, with animation by Jeff Lyons and character designs by Edward McLachlan himself. The animation style, while simple by today's standards, had a quirky, charming vibe that made it stand out in a sea of cartoons from that era. Okay, let's talk about the episodes. While there's too much to mention in just one podcast, I can definitely highlight some of the memorable ones. Eggs is Eggs. This is the very first episode and sets a tone for the rest of the series. Bangers and Mash try to help with breakfast, but as you can guess, things don't go according to plan, resulting in an eggy disaster. Ghost Boat? In this one, the chimps end up trying to prove they're braver than their friends by boasting about an encounter with a ghost. Unsurprisingly, things do get a bit out of hand. What a shower. This episode features the chimp's hilarious attempts at helping around the house, only for it to descend into utter chaos. And also ABC for Chimps, a classic and educational moment where Bangers and Mash are punished by having to write their ABCs. Of course, they get distracted and hilarity ensues. And it doesn't stop there. Each episode is filled with high energy gags, creative solutions to problems, and a lot of laughs. The characters are another big draw. Bangers and Mash themselves are your typical troublemakers, but they're endearing in their own way. Yes, they're mischievous, but never malicious, and always get their comeuppance in the end. But let's not forget their side characters, like their teacher, Mrs. Chum, who has no problem punishing them with their endless lines of ABCs, or the grumpy Miss Snitchnose, whose witchy ways only add to the fun. I have to say it's a shame that Bangers and Mash didn't get more recognition at the time, but that's part of what makes it so special. It is one of those underrated shows that, while not a mainstream hit, still had loyal fan base. It even made its way to New Zealand and Australia, proving that its appeal wasn't limited to the UK. The show also had a life beyond the television. In 1992, Bangers and Mash got its very own video game. Published for the Commodore 64 and the Amiga, the game was another fun extension of the cartoon, allowing fans to interact with their favourite chimps in a whole new way. Though it wasn't a massive hit, it's still a neat piece of merchandise for fans of the series. So what makes Bangers and Mash so memorable all these years later? It's the mix of chaos, humour, and a little bit of heart. While the chimps are always getting into trouble, their misadventures are never mean-spirited, and there's always a sense of innocent fun about it. Whether you were watching it as a kid or discovering it now, there's something timeless about the series. As we wrap up, it's clear that Bangers and Mash may not have been the most talked about show of the late 80s, but it certainly left an impression on the fans who grew up with it. And honestly, isn't that what truly matters? Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Big Kids TV Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this trip down memory lane. If you haven't seen Bangers and Mash yet, I definitely recommend checking it out. And who knows, maybe a new generation of fans will be born. Until next time, keep embracing the magic of childhood memories.
Big